Today, we're talking about lifestyle inflation. You ever wonder why your paycheck disappears before you can even say the word budget? Well, picture this. You've finally gotten that new promotion that you've been waiting for so long. And with it, you're starting to envision all of the ways that you can spend that new money. Maybe a shiny new car, a fancy new house, nicer food, better food. Maybe you want to go out and do things that cost more money that you haven't been able to do before because your salary just hasn't allowed you to do that. But before you know it, all that new cash seems to have disappeared. It doesn't even feel like you got a raise anymore. It's just gone. And it has you scratching your head, wondering where in the world it just went to. Well, if that sounds familiar, or if it sounds like a bad dream that you just want to crush into oblivion and never have manifest in the real world, stick around because we're going to talk about how we can make your money work for you and your hard work pay off in the end. So lifestyle inflation, also known as lifestyle creep, this refers to a phenomenon where people start making more money, but they don't actually start building more wealth. Despite getting pay raises, it might feel like you're always just working uphill. You're always pushing a boulder uphill. You're Sisyphus. You're pushing that boulder up a hill forever, and you're just doomed to keep repeating that process no matter how many raises you get. You're just kind of doing the same thing forever, ad nauseum. And while for some people, sometimes there might be practical reasons or things out of their control that cause this to happen, for so many people, this phenomena is really based on factors that could be controlled. And even though it's probably not popular to say, to some degree, a lot of this comes down to a sense of personal entitlement. And there's a whole lot of ways that this trap can manifest itself. It might be buying a bigger house, maybe moving out of a house, buying a house at all, because in today's economy, that's a big feat on its own. Maybe just moving out of an apartment. It could be getting a nicer car. It might be going out to fancy restaurants, or maybe even you're still cooking from home, but you're just spending more money on your food. You're getting better ingredients, higher quality things. It can also manifest in the form of maybe you like gadgets, maybe you like old school watches, or maybe you like high-tech little techie gadget things that, well, you tell me some cool gadgets because I don't really follow that type of thing. But it might just be luxury items in general, or just way too many non-luxury items. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to spending more money after you start earning more money. There's a lot of different factors that can contribute to this type of behavior, but really, one of the most common is just social status. You might see people in sort of your plane or your level of social status doing certain things, having certain behaviors, purchasing certain types of goods and services. And whether or not you want these things for yourself or not, or you're just doing it to sort of fit in, we run into this hedonic adaptation. And now this is a reference to what you might know as a hedonic treadmill. And it's just this concept where you are constantly trying to keep pace. You're constantly trying to maintain the standard that is your baseline. If your baseline is very modest, it's very simple, and you don't have a lot of goods, your baseline is going to feel pretty low. So when you just go out to have a nice dinner, that's going to seem like a really big deal. But if you're used to going out to really expensive restaurants all the time and living a certain type of lifestyle, that will be your baseline. And going back below that is going to come with some type of pain. And it's this psychological phenomena that we need to be very careful of, because as we increase our standard of living, it's going to just start feeling normal. It might not have felt normal a couple years ago, but you don't even realize that anymore because it's your normal now. And that's one of the reasons why pay raises, making more money, is not the key to building more wealth. It can be a very useful tool to get there, but it's not everything. Let's consider a hypothetical person. We'll just call her Sarah. Let's say she has a really good starting salary right now. She's making $100,000 every year. And she just got a raise by 20%, so she's making $120,000 a year. However, her expenses this year just went up 30%. She just decided she wants to send her kids to a better school. She wants to wear nicer clothes. She wants to feed herself and her family higher quality food. So her expenses just increased 30%, and her pay only increased 20%. So despite the fact that she's making more, she's actually behind where she was before, and she's not able to build the wealth that she was previously. And this can really be seen in real world statistics. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And what that means is that people, they need the money in their paycheck in order to meet their expenses that month. So if the next paycheck doesn't come in, they're going to be in the negative. So 78% of people live that way, where if the paycheck doesn't come in, they're in trouble. But still, nearly half of those earning six figures are still living paycheck to paycheck. So clearly something's going on. It's not just about making more money. Otherwise, anybody who's making six figures, unless maybe you're in New York City, San Francisco, some of those type of places, you should have plenty left over. But often what this all comes back down to is people trying to live a lifestyle that they cannot afford. And maybe you could afford it previously even, but with inflation, maybe you have to lower that. And that's just an unfortunate reality. But it's interesting because different generations give different explanations or justifications for why they live paycheck to paycheck or for why they're struggling to make ends meet. For example, 64% of Gen Z stated that it was high living expenses that accounted for this issue. 57% of millennials cited a lack of budgeting and financial planning. 44% of Gen Xers reported low income as a problem, and 64% of baby boomers cited a rise in cost of living. And that comes back to a lot of that inflation that we were talking about before, but also lifestyle inflation. And as you can imagine, if you have base inflation at a high rate and you have lifestyle inflation at the same time, it's all compounding, making everything that much worse. And you know, all of this can be very overwhelming, demoralizing, demotivating to know what to do, because the price of things does continue to go up. And maybe you feel the pressure to, or maybe you just want to live a higher quality life to increase your standard of living over time. But how do you do that? Well, in order to be able to do that, fortunately, there are some very simple, time-tested and proven ways that we can combat lifestyle inflation. So the first step is our timeless and classic approach. We need to start budgeting. You know, you need to know what's coming into your account every single month. You need to know what's going out. You need to know what your baseline is today. Because if you don't know that, it's impossible for you to go in the future and then know exactly how your spending compares now to back then. So if we want to have that back then in 5-10 years from now, we need to develop our budget today. We need to start doing that right now. So if you get a 10% raise, for example, a nice healthy raise to your salary, you probably want to be setting aside at least half of that, if not all of it or nearly all of it, into a savings category or into an investment category. Otherwise, it might just get consumed by your consumer spending categories. You know, your groceries, your fun shopping money, your entertainment, whatever it may be. If you do not purposely beforehand set that aside, it might just disappear on you. And if you struggle with that, you struggle to set aside that new income that you have, definitely consider automatic transfers. Most banking institutions have this. Matter of fact, I don't know of any that don't. There might be some weird little one, some back corner somewhere that doesn't let you do an automatic transfer. However, most banks and most reputable banks that you're going to find, they allow you to automatically set up a transfer. So if you were transferring in $100 every month into your savings account, after making 10% more, you can just bump that up to $110. And then in your mind, nothing's really changed. You got the raise, but it's all going into your savings anyway, so you can keep doing whatever it was that you were doing. However, I think for a lot of us, just setting up that budget is not enough on its own, because we need to have a vision. We need to know where we're going. We need to know why we are doing the things that we are doing. So just having that paper, those numbers, might not be good enough. So if that's the case, and probably for most of us it is, we need to be dreaming about our financial goals. So think, where do you want to be at the end of this year, in 5 years, in 10 years, by the time you retire? Once you have that vision, we have a purpose, we have a mission that we can work towards, and you can build your budget around achieving that goal. Otherwise, it's just going to get consumed by those consumer spending categories because you don't really have a better purpose for it. You're not thinking in the future. So much of financial freedom, financial success, building wealth is thinking long term. So unless we're thinking long term, we're probably never going to get there. You can't expect to ever get to any place that you're not purposely aiming to get to. You'll get somewhere, you'll probably move somewhere, but it might not be where you want to go. So come up with that vision, come up with that plan for what you want to achieve, and then we can start working towards it. You need to just ask yourself, is that lifestyle that you want to live in 10 years, in 20 years, that nice high value lifestyle, is that worth sacrificing today for some $30 sockeye salmon fillets? And don't get me wrong, I love salmon. I love sockeye salmon. That's delicious. But I want you to be able to enjoy that. Matter of fact, I want you to be able to enjoy that every single day, not just today, and then be left with, I don't know, freezer burnt salmon fillets when you retire, because that would just be depressing. So if we plan today, we sacrifice a little bit today, then if we eat a few of those freezer burnt salmon fillets today, then we can have so much more in the future because of something called compound growth. And if you're interested in how your spending today is going to affect your future, I'll pin something right over here. However, the second thing we need to do to mitigate lifestyle inflation over time is to really check our egos. So many of the behaviors we engage in are based around our ego. They're based around social perception. The cars we drive, the neighborhoods we live in, the houses we own, the food we buy, the food we eat, the places we shop at, the type of clothes we wear. These are sort of barometers and metrics by which we gauge our place in society based on a social hierarchy. But that's not really helping anybody. You know, there's that classic phrase, keeping up with the Joneses. And that just means that you're trying to maintain a lifestyle like your neighbors are. However, what you don't realize is that your neighbors, while they look great on the outside, they're deeply in debt, they're putting everything on credit cards, and they're going to drown in their debt sometime in the near future. And if you've ever watched Dave Ramsey, you probably know his little tagline of, "Let your paid off house become the status symbol of choice." It's not as flashy as that beautiful, expensive car that's parked right in the front lot, or maybe the 2 or 3 of them in front of the mobile home. Yeah, you know what's going on there, and it's not good. But let your sense of identity come from your successes. Other people don't need to see them. Some of the most successful people that I know that have money are not the ones that show it. You don't need people to think that you have something you don't have. It'd be a lot better to be underestimated. And I don't know about you, but I'd rather be underestimated. People think I have a whole lot less than I have, than for them to think that there's a whole lot more that I have that I just can't live up to. And the reality is that people who have that high sense of personal entitlement, that have that need for gratification from other people, they're going to be the ones, in the end, who are left with nothing. Almost all the time, they're going to be pretty much destitute by the time that they retire. And this channel is all about finances, it's all about money, it's all about building wealth, which I think are great things. However, what it cannot be about, should not be about ever, is about building up a bigger ego, being flashier about it. If that's something you're into, there's a whole subset of YouTubers online who will rent the big house, rent the expensive car, and pretend that they live there because it makes you think that they're so successful. But really, the irony all along is that they're just inflating themselves, and you're actually probably more successful than they are. If you're just doing basic budgeting, if you're building your savings, you're investing, you're better off than most of the people who act like they have a whole lot more than they really do. So instead of trying to build up or maintain some sort of facade that's not real, spending money that you really shouldn't be, spending all the excess that you have, really, you should be setting that aside, putting that in savings, putting that in your investments, watching it grow over time, where other people can't see it, but you know what's happening. You know that your wealth is building. Those wise financial decisions in the future, perhaps literally, will pay dividends for you. What you do now has a direct impact on where you will be tomorrow and where you will be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now. And if you've fallen prey to lifestyle inflation before, or maybe you're engaging in it right now, it's okay. I think most of us to some degree have fallen prey to that. The important thing is that you course correct. Very few people who are successful never had any issues. Most people who find success went through a period, a down period, a tough period, but they course corrected. So if you can do that, you will be able to achieve more than you will be able to if you just ignore it, if you just let it go. So if this is something you're currently experiencing, you're currently trying to combat lifestyle inflation, or maybe you're out on the other side, I would love to hear your experiences with this, because everybody's experience is going to be a little bit different. But if you got any value from this, please go ahead and give the like button a scratch on the head and consider subscribing. I really do appreciate it. But until next time, have a good one.